What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com, and I am back with my top 5 bets for the week in the world of mixed martial arts. A few different promotions featured this week. There's a lot of European MMA on this weekend, as well as the I was going to say a big UFC card. It's not that big of a card, but it's an interesting few fights on it. Do you know what? It's actually, I would say a lot of these cards are not sneakily that good. This one kind of is sneakily okay, to be honest. And that's probably as good as you're going to get from me on these UFC cards. These fight night cards that kind of are meaningless in lots of different ways, but the main event is very meaningful. And there's a few other fun fights in the middle of it as well. And, we can't complain too much because there's two really, really great pay-per-views, one of which is actually a pay-per-view here over by me, but that's another discussion for another day. But they're coming up very soon, so we can't complain too much, I suppose. Someone described it to me the other day as kind of a quiet period in the world of mixed martial arts, and I suppose it is in one way, and in another way you still have lots of, so your Cage Warriors last week, a massive card. Obviously, we gave the bets in that. One of the fights fell through, so it didn't happen. One of the bets is a future bet, and I think out of the 3 left, I think we got 2 right, maybe. But look, I said it last week, and it's it wasn't a banner week, I suppose, for betting because there wasn't loads of MMA. There is loads of MMA this weekend, but I wouldn't say loads of top 11 MMA. Octagon, KSW putting on very, very good cards. Octagon especially are growing an awful lot. We know where KSW are, still obviously ahead of probably everyone in Europe at the moment, and obviously we know what the UFC are. So very interesting time for betting, very interesting time as well. I would say to keep an eye on even the previews that I'm doing for KSW with the help of my good friend Sean Denny. Keep an eye on people like him. Keep an eye on if there's a Cage Warriors card coming up, myself and other people covering the sport in this part of the world. I really think it helps, even if they're not giving out betting advice, but they might tell you something about this fighter which you hadn't seen or heard before, and you can use that in your own your own betting picks, I suppose, which I kind of like to do. I'd never advise anyone to take all of my picks on board. I'd advise someone to listen to what I have to say. Maybe if I pull out something about a certain fighter, an Irish fighter, or a fighter I've been watching for a long time in Bellator or Cage Warriors in the UFC, and make their own decision on how they would like to bet. So yeah, I had a very interesting week in the world of betting. Actually, my beloved Man United were playing this week. Anthony Martial, one of their strikers, I bet on him to score. He was injured in the warm-up, so I think I may have gotten my money back if he was injured in the warm-up. Maybe I would have been lucky. But no, he played and went off after like 10 minutes injured, and the guy who replaced him, Cristiano Ronaldo, which people know, scored. So bad week for me in betting. Bad week. And let's bet responsibly, but let's responsibly get that money back that I lost. And Anthony Martial with the bets for this week. Let's get straight into it. First bet of the week. I have 2 from the UFC first, then 2 from European MMA, and then I have my flyer of the week is from the UFC as well. First bet, I'm going for Askar Askarov as my first bet this week, and I'm going for him to win win by decision, not inside this, win by decision at plus 150 against Brandon Royval. And if you look at that fight, straight up, Askar Askarov is around. I see him around minus 250. I see him minus 240 here in a couple of places. Royval around minus 205, plus 205 or plus 200. So you're changing that bet from, minus 250 to a plus by taking it by decision. Now, we're at flyweight and we see an awful lot of decisions. We know at flyweight and an awful lot of very, very good fights. I'm not bringing down flyweight in any way, but I always love to look and see what the decision prices are now. Having said that, Askar Askarov hasn't had too many decisions in his career. 3 only. Sorry, 4. 4 decisions in his career. 3 decision wins in his career, 1 draw, and 1 decision loss. And those were his last 5 fights. So he had 3 decision wins in a row, either side of the draw and the loss. So all of his last few fights are by decision. 5 in a row, all by decision. So I think that tells a lot. You look at a guy and you look at that record and he has, 7 submissions, 4 KOs, and thinking, he's only a few decisions. But when you look at it closer, they're all, they're all the most recent fights. You look at Brandon Royval and he is, I suppose, a similar guy. Not many decisions, only 2 decision wins, but 4 decision losses. That is a very, very key part of this year. Now, I'm not a big one always for looking at stats. I like looking at the ability of one guy versus the ability of the next guy. But sometimes especially when you're looking at betting like this, I think you have to look at it that way. You look at him against Bontorin as well. We remember Bontorin, I suppose, most famously, maybe for some people, against Kaikar France, going in, taking him down, using his wrestling. He went to a decision with Bontorin, did Royval. And that's his only decision in the last while. But if you're talking about a guy, and I'll mention again, Royval, 7 submission wins, only 3 KOs, 1 loss by submission. So 10 of his 16 fights, 10 of his 20 fights, half of his fights have ended in a submission. But when you look then at Askarov as well, almost half of his fights, 7 of 16 have ended in a submission as well. Very often in MMA, when you have 2 submission guys going against each other, it's very, very unlikely to end in submission. Now, I wouldn't say they're submission guys. Askarov, very, very well rounded. Royval, very well rounded. I would look at Askarov as more of a striker these days than anything else, I suppose. A lot of the Russian fighters come through, won a lot of their fights, by submission. But he was, fighting in ACB and other places as well, getting guillotines and triangles and anacondas and everything. But is the likelihood of these 2 lads submitting each other high? I would say probably no. And the levels, as I read out, the amount of knockouts they've had hasn't been massive either. So I'm giving it to you purely here from a statistical point of view, first of all. That all those statistics to me point to this one going to decision. A lot of decisions recently against top level guys. When you meet, when Royval especially meets, a grappler as good as him, goes to decision, it's a stalemate. Now, having said that, on the feet, Askarov, I think Askarov is the type of guy who will dominate and finish you late. Even you look at some of his submissions and stuff, he's, the second round, third round, he's a 5th round submission win. I don't know, and not since 2014 has he finished a fight in the first round. So he's not the type of guy. He's a very, very good striker, very good all-around fighter, but he's not exactly going to blow you away early, is he? He's not that type of fighter. The last, 8 years show that. And I think Royval, we've seen Royval. We know what Royval is as well. He's a very, very good fighter. He can blow you away, I suppose. He would beat Matt Schnell in the first round in that fight a couple of months ago. I'm just looking here through his record. He has a good few first round finishes, but is he going to blow Askarov away? I don't think so. Now, if you look at it that way, I said earlier on, 2 submission guys going against each other, and they're not submission guys because Askarov especially, you couldn't call him that. But also, if you look at the submission base, you say that's even. You look at the striking and say Askarov, I think is probably a better. I think he's a better striker. Although Royval, you can never rule the guys fighting out of Factory X and that gym out of it in terms of the ability to strike. There's some really, really good strikers there. We see. I'm just looking through some of the guys on their roster, Anthony Hernandez hits Anthony Smith, very, very good striker, and others as well. You can never rule them out, but I just think Askarov is going to be a little ahead. And I don't think he's going to blow him out early, and I think it's going to go long. So, all that point, and now that's a very, very long-winded explanation to maybe prove my point. But I think, looking at it in the cold light today, I think a lot of that does prove the point, to be honest. I think it'll go to decision, and I think Askarov will win. If you're simply asking me that, I do think it'll be a great fight, though, because I do think, as I said, I think Royval will go for it early. I think Askarov will just be a little bit too good. And I think there could be a nullification in the middle with Askarov maybe winning late again. I think it's going to be a very, very fun fight, a very, very good fight. And we'll see Askarov, I think for a long time, and me and a lot of other people thought Askarov was bound for championship glory. I think he'd won so many fights in a row. The only blip was the draw, I suppose, with Moreno, who's gone on to be the multiple time champion. And then obviously he lost to Kai Kara-France, and a brilliant performance from Kai Kara-France. He beat Joseph Benavidez, beat Pantoja before that as well. And I think he'll get back to those winning ways. So to win that decision, plus 150, Askarov, that's a good first bet of the week. I like that. Get yourself on the board. I like that bet. The next bet, I'm going for the opposite. I'm going for someone to win inside the distance. And the bet I'm going for is Alonzo Menifield to win inside the distance. He's fighting Misha Cirkunov. And I was, you know what, I was a little bit surprised to see him as big of a favourite as he is at minus 200, minus 225 some places, plus 180 for Misha Cirkunov. But I was also surprised to see that the inside the distance price was plus 105, because honestly, like if he's winning this fight, I thought he might be like a little bit of a favourite here, because we see the big power, we see what he's done recently. And I thought the knockout price wouldn't have been, too different from the price to just win straight up. But the fact it's plus money, I like that a lot. Now, sorry, that's to win inside the distance. So you win not by knockout or submission. Just to win by knockout is plus 125. The difference between, that and that, I win for the plus 105. Now, if you like the plus 125, I wouldn't put you off that either. But I think that's a really good price, plus 105 for Menifield to win inside the distance. Like, you look at the trajectory of both of them, and I think it's a tough one to look at and not think that Menifield is maybe on the more of an upward trajectory. He won against Askarov the last time. Obviously, the William Knight fight was a bit of a weird one, and he beaten Ed Herman and Sharon before that. In his career, in 12 of his wins, 9 of them have been by KO, 2 submissions as well. So all but one have been inside the distance. So I'm betting him inside the distance. That's fair enough. That, what's that, over 90% inside the distance. You look at Misha Cirkunov, his 8 losses, 7 of them have been inside the distance. 4 by KO, 3 by submission. So if you're looking at that method, I think those will go a long way to kind of to prove that. Cirkunov as well, more to the point that he's maybe on a downward trajectory, as opposed to Menifield. Lost his last 3 in a row, finished in 2 of them. Ryan Spann and Wellington Turman. Now Spann, I think, is a very, very good fighter on his day. The Jocko lost, split decision, close one. That Wellington Turman, though, okay, it's an armbar, I suppose, but it's not a good sign, I suppose, for someone like Misha Cirkunov, who 35 years of age now as well, getting on in years. I suppose you look at Menifield is 34, but I would say he's maybe a younger 34 than the 35 there. I've always liked Cirkunov, and I like what he can do. I think he's a good, well-rounded fighter. Him and Ian Cutelaba, for some reason, I always have like a little bit of a soft spot from him, and I always think they can maybe rise a little bit. And Johnny Walker as well, I don't know, that kind of, the class of light heavyweights that came up, maybe not together actually, they were a bit apart, I suppose. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for them, and I thought, do you know what? It's a division where you think one of them would rise, and none of them really have. Johnny Walker, I think, is actually good. Recently, maybe not the performances, I think, have gone for him, but the wins maybe have not all going to. Obviously, the Jamahal Hill one was very disappointing early, but the Thiago Santos fight was a very good performance and not a good win. Obviously, he had the win last time as well, but. Getting away from the point, I think Menifield may be a bad matchup in terms of right now for Cirkunov. You're on a 3-fight loss. I like 3-fight losing skid. I think Cirkunov, especially with the power, Alonzo Menifield's nickname is Atomic. I'm just looking here. I think he's going to want to push this against the cage and take him down. I really do. And when you do that sort of thing against Menifield, there's a big chance you're going to get knocked out, because he's smart to that, and he's quick, and he loves throwing that uppercut, and he loves throwing that kind of check hook inside. And then if you the problem is, if he gets the first one, Cirkunov, and takes him down, now maybe he won't, maybe he'll just go and strike with him, but I'm thinking you're fighting someone like Menifield, I don't think you want to do that. But let's say he does that, all well and good, but if he goes for the first one and doesn't get him down, that's trouble, because then you've Menifield, you lose a bit of confidence. You've Menifield coming forward at you. And when that happens and Menifield starts landing those big shots, it's going to be very hard to survive that. Very, very hard. So this is a fight where if Cirkunov wasn't on a 3-fight losing skid, if this wasn't career almost defining, at this stage of his career defining anyway, I suppose, I would have this closer. But I think Menifield, that edge will be there for Menifield, and I think he'll win it. And to win inside the distance, plus 105, I think that's a pretty good bet there. Right, my next bet I am going for is from KSW, and I will come back and I will give another couple of picks from the UFC. I know people ask me for some picks from the UFC. I will do that. Now, I won't give all my picks from the UFC because I like to study a bit more, especially the ones I'm looking at. I like to pick out a few fights and study and kind of look at the records and look at a few fights as well, and and see which way I'm going with them. And I haven't done that for all of the UFC cards, so I don't like giving picks for all of them. I like looking at the prices, maybe seeing what the what the initial thoughts are on each of the prices and going from there. But we will go through some of them. Very interesting KSW card. My preview for it will be out before this, I'm sure. But the bet I'm going for in that KSW card, not the biggest price in the world, but I'm going for Tomasz Narkun to beat Henrique de Silva. He's minus 400 there, so maybe you want to throw it into an accumulator. And actually, my next bet isn't the biggest price either. Maybe you want to throw that into accumulators, or maybe throw the two of them together. But this is a win on the board, I think, here. You look at Henrique de Silva, and I mentioned this in the preview show as well. Who was it? It was Arslan he went in there in the last fight against, and he just absolutely threw hell for leather. And you've seen him do this before. Now, I'm not sure he'll do that against Narkun, but the problem is, either way, it's going to be a tough night against Narkun. When Henrique de Silva went in there against Arslan, he went hell for leather. Arslan kind of threw the jab, threw the right hand, threw the counters, and got the Silva out of there very quickly. I think got him out of there in the first round. If I'm not mistaken, maybe in the first 2 or 3 minutes. And if he does that against Narkun will take him out of there quicker, I think. Or maybe not quicker, but maybe more devastatingly. He will absolutely jab him up. If he needs to push him against the cage and take him down, or if he needs to push him against the cage and make his life a misery for him, he absolutely will do that. He will do what's needed in there. And that is a really, really, really bad position to be in if you're Henrique de Silva. It is a really, really, really bad position to be in, because you're going to get destroyed. Now, the other part of that, if the Silva comes in there and he fights a slower pace and he doesn't go at him, well, Narkun's just going to pick him apart. He really, really is just going to absolutely pick him apart. Narkun as well, really good on the ground, as I mentioned. Really good takedowns, but also guillotines, triangles, rear naked chokes, as well as being a very, very good kickboxer. De Silva's chances on the feet to land a big shot, but I would say that's unlikely. Plus, he's probably plus 300, plus 350. That's not big enough for a flyer. I wouldn't give him as a flyer, and I'm going for Tomasz Narkun to win that. Very, very good fighter. Will be looking to get back in the mix for a title shot. Obviously, the former 205-pound champion. So a big fight for him. I don't think he'll make any mistakes. To be honest, I think Henrique de Silva will make mistakes. So even more clear there for Narkun in that one. And I think honestly, I wouldn't give a plus 400 if I didn't think it was a good price. I think this is a very good price. So yeah, sorry, minus 400, and I think he'll get it done there. Right, the fourth bet, I'm going for Mallory Martin. She is minus 350 here in her fight over on Octagon. So, Octagon have been doing really good things of late, and they have another very, very good card here. John Hathaway is on the card, who people, might remember. Christian Eckering, who's a massive star coming through, and Mallory Martin as well. She's fighting Katharina Dalisda. Now, I was looking through this, and this one stood out to me because one of Mallory Martin's opponents was one of my bets from last week on the Cage Warriors card, Designy, and Katharina Dalisda. I was like, where did I know that name? Looked her up on Sherdog.com, and she fought Danny McCormack from Ireland. So I was like, oh yeah, and I remember, and I went and watched her. And Mallory Martin here to win this fight is minus 350. And I think that is a very, very good bet, to be honest. If anyone knows, Danny McCormack, and she won that fight against Dalisda. She's a good striker, but she's a very good grappler, takes people down, dominates them that way. And looking at that fight coming in for Dalisda, I thought that was an area where she could be caught. And she had been and was caught in those sort of areas. You look at Mallory Martin, especially her fight against Designy I think it was in the Contender Series, if I'm not mistaken. I was on a very good wrestler and will take you down and win the fight that way. And really, I don't have much more of a call in it than that. I think in general, Mallory Martin is a more well-rounded fighter than Katharina Dalisda. I think she's just a way, way, way better fighter. And again, at minus 350, I wouldn't give that bet unless, sometimes you just watch two people and you think, not that they shouldn't be fighting, but this is kind of a layup for this fighter, sometimes you just see those fights. They can even happen in real high level fights. Like that time Daniel Cormier and Dan Henderson were meant to fight. Like Dan Henderson, a really, really good fighter, legend of the sport, but he's put in there with a prime Daniel Cormier, who is 50 pounds heavier than him, probably, even though they're fighting at the same weight. Naturally, I suppose 50 pounds heavier than him, that fight is going to go this way. I feel like that in Mallory Martin. Now, famous last words for me here. I've been very strong in it, but I do think Mallory Martin, I just think her wrestling is going to be too much. That bet at minus 350. I was looking at that and I was genuinely expecting it to be minus 1,000. Genuinely expecting it to be minus 1,000, maybe a minimum of minus 5, minus 600. But when I see a minus 350, that is a great one. If you're doing 3 or 4 UFC bets this weekend, you want to throw in some to accumulator, that's a good one. That's a good one to throw in there to that accumulator. So over an Octagon, there's some interesting names on it. Jeremy Kimball is on the card. As I mentioned, John Hathaway, he's a favourite as well. It's interesting. John Hathaway's been out for a long, long time, and he's minus 250 favourite there. Christian Eckerling is a big favourite, minus 400 as well against Danielson Neves. It's an interesting card. I'm going to probably tune in for some of that as well. It's hard to get everything because there's, as I said, KSW and other things as well. But that's my bet from there anyway. Right. My last bet, my flyer of the week. I'm going for the UFC main event, and I'm going for Viviane Araujo to win inside the distance at plus 600. Now this is a great price. I was very surprised when I saw this coming up, and I saw the price on this Araujo as well. Just straight up, I like that bet. Plus 190, minus 225 for Alexa Grasso. Do you know what? Maybe I've gotten carried away a little bit. Maybe I have gotten carried away a little bit with Viviane Araujo, but I really, really enjoyed her last performance. I thought she was very, very good. You look at her and she's a physically so strong, and physically a very, very good athlete as well as a good technician. And when you beat Andrea Lee, I think the way she did, I think that's a fantastic win. Okay, before that she lost to Kaylin Chukagan, but it was, I don't know, it was one of those fights where you kind of ride off a little bit just because of the stage of her career. Now, the problem with her, and I was talking to my good friend Spencer Kyle about this as well, she is 35 years of age, so now is the time she kind of has to do it. But you look at her and you look at what she's done over the last while, and I know, okay, she's gone to a lot of decisions. Her last 6 in a row have all been decisions, so maybe I'm gone mad picking her inside the distance. I just think the 5 rounds against Grasso will be I think it'll be an advantage for Araujo. You look at Grasso's record. In all her fights, she's never been 5 rounds. She's never been to that 5. And I think, okay, you look at Araujo and okay, she hasn't been either. And so maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like her style might suit it better than the boxing heavy style that we see from Alexa Grasso. And we saw her absolutely destroy Joanne Wood in her last fight and end up submitting her. I just think when you're Alexa Grasso, I think you have a very big physical speed and athletic advantage over most people in that division when you fight them. Now, Macy Barber is someone who has that too, and she was able to beat her. But who will have the advantage in this fight is maybe the question I'm asking here. I think it'll be Araujo. I really, really do. I think it'll be Araujo who has that. I think she'll be able to soak up a lot of the pressure. I think she'll be able to miss a lot of the shots. And I think she'll be able to maybe use her strength and her size to take away the gas tank and maybe a little bit of Grasso. Now, maybe I'm wrong. And maybe Grasso will get into the 4th and the 5th round and won't struggle. But I just have a feeling she might. Now, this is a flyer as well. This is a flyer. So a lot of the flyers are on feeling. And this one is definitely on a feeling. I just got something. And I've had a couple of people maybe try to talk me out of it. Spencer included recently. With good reason. They're probably right. I just see something in Araujo. I really do. I see something I like. I may, you look at the people up behind me and I see something I like in all of them, and I'm that sort of person. I'm that sort of guy who bets as well, When you're looking at the bets, you're like, is that going to work in that situation? Is that person going to take advantage of this thing when that happens? And I look at Araujo and I just feel like she has more weapons to make things work than most other people. Now, will that be the case if it goes into like a boxing match with Alexa Grasso from distance? No. Absolutely not. I wouldn't say that at all. I think she needs to mix up. Am I thinking going out grappling the whole time or whatever? No, absolutely. I think she needs to be well-rounded. She needs to show that well-roundedness, and she needs to take Grasso to places she hasn't been before. That's what she needs to do, and I think if she can do that, I think she can get the stoppage here. Inside the distance is interesting. Plus 600. You can get it. I'm actually looking at one place here. It's up as far as plus 700 to win by knockout. She's plus 1600. So if you fancy that, submission plus 900. Very, very interesting there. So yeah, that's my bet. I'm going for Araujo inside the distance plus 600. Right, let me take a look at a couple more of the other bets. I look at, first of all, at KSW, Damian Stasiak against Ruchala, minus 240 for Ruchala. I remember I said on the preview show, I'd look at the betting there and see what price Stasiak is. Plus 190, I don't think it's enough to tempt me, but I don't think I'd bet on the minus 240 of Ruchala either. He's the up-and-coming guy. I think he's 7-0. Stasiak's been around for a long time, fought in lots of different of the big promotions. I think I would avoid that one, to be honest. I would avoid, if I was betting on anyone, I'd bet in Stasiak at minus or plus 190. I wouldn't bet at Ruchala. Now, maybe afterwards that looks like a great price and he wins it, but I'd take another step before I would go with that one. Very interesting price here. The Omelanchuk Martinek. Omelanchuk is minus 205, and let me just make sure here in case I got mad. Yes, I looked at this earlier in the week and he was plus 110. He was plus 110. Omelanchuk was, and Martinek was minus 120. He was minus 137 when I looked at these first. So this is taking a massive jump here. Martinek has gone from minus 137 to plus 165, and Omelanchuk is now a minus 205 favourite. Very, very interesting lines. Very interesting. Now, I haven't seen too much of Martinek. I spoke to Sean Denny about him. Very, very good fighter by all accounts, and from what I have seen of him, very, very good. Omelanchuk, we know he's been around for a long time. Again, I find that hard to judge, lads. I don't know. Maybe more better betting experts than me can explain the change in that line. Maybe it's because the price on Omelanchuk was so high, and that probably was it. I'd say this is a relatively even fight. Like, if you're betting on the price, you would bet on that plus 165 for Martinek now, I think. Like, why was he a minus favourite 2 or 3 days ago, and why is it that price now? That would suggest a bet on that. Very, very interesting there. I talked about the other fight, the Narkun against the Silva fight. As I mentioned, I gave Narkun a minus 400 there. There's an LFA card as well this weekend. If anyone fancies getting on that, maybe some of our our American colleagues, can run you through that. The UFC then is all. I'll run through that in a second. But before that, there's also an FEN card there. I see Matthias Strakowski is on that. He's an underdog at plus 275 over Dawid Kalinski, who's obviously been around for a while. On the Octagon card, I read out some of those earlier on, so I won't go through that massively again. But as I said, I'm going for Mallory Martin there. I do think Eckerling will win that fight. Bojan Milojevic is on the card as well against Leandro Silva. Very, very close there. Both around the minus 120, minus 110. I'd probably go for Bojan in that one there, I suppose. And John Hathaway, I don't know can you bet on a guy who's been out for that long? I hope he comes back and I hope he looks good, but geez, I don't think I'd be betting on it at that stage. So interesting stuff there. Right, in the UFC, so the Grasso Araujo, obviously went through that. Grasso is the favourite, minus 225, plus 190 for Araujo. Cole Swanson, Jonathan Martinez, interesting. The Cub is the underdog here, plus 182, minus 212 for Jonathan Martinez. Cub, down through the years, hasn't been a guy who I suppose has been an underdog too many times to names like this. Jonathan Martinez, 16-4, went out and he won his last 3 in a row, all by decision. Vince Morales, Perez, and Lavishvili. I wonder. This is a bantamweight, yeah. So Cub Swanson, obviously, moving down. We will see how that works out for him, and I suppose that's the reason here. He did beat Darren Elkins last time out. That was nigh on a year ago now, and I suppose that price. I was like wondering why the price is that price, and it is that price, I suppose, because he's moving down. If you think he can cut weight and get down well, I think that plus 182. I think that's a good price. I think he matches up well there. Askarov, as I mentioned, he is the favourite there, minus 225, plus 192, plus 200. I see plus 205 actually. I see Royval here in one place. Dusa Tatarovic is a favourite, minus 205 against Jordan Wright. Let's see what the knockout price is in there. Wright by KO, plus 200, plus 300. Is the betting up for Todorovic to win by KO? It doesn't seem to be. But anyway, yeah. So if you fancy that, go for that. Menifield Cirkunov, minus 200, plus 170 for Cirkunov. Brandon Davis against Mana Martinez. Very close betting there, minus 150 for Martinez. Davis. That's not a bad price, plus 132. Malkoun and Massimov. I haven't been that impressed with Massimov, to be honest. He always comes in as a favourite. Malkoun, the best fighter in the world. I'd probably go for Malkoun if I was betting on someone there at plus 120, minus 140, but not with a great amount of confidence. Victor Henry against Rafael Assunção. This is a sort of match again. I suppose Assunção a few years ago wouldn't have been a plus 270 favourite, but Henry has looked good. So look, it's the step up, and I think the price reflects that in terms of he's a very good fighter, but Assunção maybe isn't where he used to be. But Assunção has been the best yardstick in the UFC for years. Very, very good fighter. I probably would go with Henry though there. Mike Jackson coming back in after the madness against Dean Barry, plus 500, minus 700 for Peter Rodriguez. Definitely avoid that one. And Sam Hughes, plus 151, minus 175 for Rodriguez. Vergara, plus 190. Tatsu Tiara, minus 225 there as well. I'd probably go for the two favourites there. So alright, I will leave it there, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'll recap my bets again. Askarov to win by decision, plus 150. Menifield wins inside the distance, plus 105. I'm going for Tomasz Narkun at minus 400. Mallory Martin at minus 350. And Viviane Araujo on the main event in the UFC to win inside the distance at plus 600. Alright, that's it from me. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.